the San Antonio Spurs reached out to us, and they were like, "We noticed your story. We noticed y'all. So many people kept telling us about you. They're like, we want you to meet DeMar DeRozan, from the
Yeah. Oh,
Spurs."
he's
and
a big mental health advocate.
oh my
Yes.
God, he's amazing.
Yes.
And he literally said,
Yes.
I want to speak to y'all. So we got our small group that started the whole mental health collaborative.
Yes.
He's like, I want to speak to y'all. And so he spoke to us about where he comes from in his community. And it's literally was a touching moment because
and trauma.
you see somebody who has star power, who's literally putting out numbers, who's literally an influence in your life. And then you see kind of the honesty and the humility of where he comes from.
It is my honor to introduce my guest, Marc Mendiola. Did I say it right?
Yes, you did.
Yay,
yes,
yay.
you did.
Okay. All right. So Marc is an undergraduate at Texas A&M University. And, here on the Couch and Color podcast, what we always talk about is the mental health needs of people who are not typically centered in the conversation of mental health, meaning people of color, including LGBTQ folks who may also be of color, and people with disabilities who may as well be of color. So it's really important to me with the podcast to make sure that we are creating space for all the different voices out there. Because like I said, there are not too many places where we really get to show up and be our full and authentic selves. And so today we're going to be authentic and unapologetic. And we're going to talk to my friend Marc about some really important work that he does. So what I want to share with you is I found Marc through an article that I was quoted in from maybe about a month or two ago. And the article was focused on the impact of gun violence and the uptick in gun violence that was noticed by a couple of researchers and reporters. And as a part of that, they profiled Marc and talked about some of the advocacy work that he's been doing. And so I reached out on Twitter, of all places, right? Sometimes social media is a force for good. And I said, would you be willing to come on the podcast because you're a rock star, like to be so young and to be in this space of advocating at this intersection of gun violence and mental health? And to my surprise, he wrote back and said, yes, I'll do the podcast. I was like, yay. So Marc is here. And Marc, I would love for you to introduce yourself to our audience and just tell us a little bit about you and how you got involved in this work.
Well, again, my name is Marc. Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity. But yes, I'm from San Antonio, Texas A&M University undergraduate. You got all of that correct. But yes, so how this all started was me just being a student, joining high school. It's that me altering from middle school to high school and kind of having that pressure of like, what organizations am I going to be in? What am I going to do? And who am I, and finding myself. And as I was doing that, I'm always just like a happy-go-lucky person, excited, wanting to join everything. Well, one of my teachers noticed like my extroverted character. And she said, you know what, Marc, we have something that I think you'd be really interested in. And so it was called the Enrichment Club. And she's like, this club is going to enrich our community. It's going to break the stigma about what opportunities we have here at South San Antonio. Because I come from a low economic side of town, 98% Hispanic. So we have a lot of stigma about what we can produce based on the resources we have at our school, which it does limit our our achievements and academics and our how we go about certain things, a lack of resource. But we wanted to kind of break that and change our community by seeing a forefront that's more like colorful or having a garden. So with this organization, it was supposed to be like beautifying the school, making murals, getting grants for gardens. Well, as we were there talking and being real and transparent with one another, after the meetings ended, we just started talking about our personal stuff. And when that happened, we started breaking these walls and limitations and started self-coping with things or having our own little therapy sessions with one another and started realizing that's a Me Too movement because they were saying things that I felt, we were just reciprocating the exact same energy. And that definitely was that we are lacking mental health resources and we are very limited and constrained by these factors. And the factors were that we live in San Antonio, which is a majority Hispanic, but the services that we needed access to were not compliant to what we need. They didn't have Medicaid. They weren't Spanish speaking, which a lot of us are bilingual or just dominantly Spanish speaking. They were in the north side of San Antonio. So these services were about 45 minutes. They also would close right when we got out of school. So kids would have to miss school. And this is when teachers would have that notion that they are bad students because they're not present or their parents don't want to bring them, when they don't honestly understand that these students were bringing to our attention that I couldn't come to school because if I wanted to put myself first or be even able to come to school, I need to go get myself help. And after going through the struggle of first finding somebody, then for them to be compliant with Spanish or English speaking, and then you come into the time when they would get there, it's just like they would also say we don't accept Medicaid and stuff like that. And it's just all of these limitations. But the biggest wall I would say would have to be not just only access, but also the community they come from, because some of these students, a lot of people don't know, they weren't only just students or brothers or sisters. They were literally sometimes the mom and dads, because their mom and dad would work. When they were at school, they were at home. And when they were at home, their parents were at work. So some of these students would have to take care of their brothers and sister, take them to bed, take them to school, and then also still find time for homework. And then on top of that, if they're like, hey, I need mental help, where's that time at, you know? So either they wouldn't get in the services, so they were trying to self-cope, but led to them either damaging themselves mentally or physically, or it could lead to them like doing other things like taking medications that they did have and using that as an outlet to coping with some of the things, or drugs or alcohol. So you just really see, as me listing these things, are huge leading factors to them going into that hole that kind of just surrounds them with outlets that are not probably the best of coping, like temporarily, and it's at its convenience. But as we started speaking about all of this stuff and all of the struggle, we started realizing, well, what can we do? Because we don't want to just sit here anymore, you know? So we have an amazing teacher. Her name was Miss Daniels. And she literally said, you know what y'all can do, right? And we're like, no, you know, we're just students. We're like, what can we do?
Right.
She's like, well, you have a school board, and the school board is supposed to help make decisions, put things on agenda, and hopefully push things towards a direction that can probably implement some of these services in our community. She's like, so we need to speak to our school board. And I said, you're right. So we all started getting together and like, well, let's make kind of a little, I guess like a testimony or like things that we think we need or what we're lacking, and then present it to the school board. Well, a lot of people were thinking, well, let's just go to the school board. It's that easy, and maybe, you know, things could just happen. We went to the school board, and they said, we love your ideas, in a sense, or like they sounded like they cared, but it was more like bland. They were just like, we need you to basically come with everything for us to understand it. They want us to understand how we're going to pay for it. Understand? I'm like, we're students, we're struggling, we're
That's
telling
right,
you we're
you're
struggling,
kids.
and we're just using. Like, I'm like, y'all literally, when y'all do the pledge, they do a pledge to students. They do a pledge to students, and they say we're for students. Never felt my school board is not for our students, and that's just the honest truth. You got to be honest, because our communities literally what can limit us, and it's literally our school board limits us a lot. But we told them, and they were like, well, just come with solutions, find a budget, make it realistic. So we're like, okay, you want us to do that? So we challenged that thing. We're not just going to limit ourselves. So what we did is we reached out to the community, we reached out to the services, we got the dates and times, we got the ratios of how many counselors we have compared to other schools. And we did a lot of work. I mean, so other schools had like about 3 or 4 social workers in each school. You know how many we had? Do you know how many we only had one social worker? One social worker for the whole district, not for the district. No. Her name was Susan Arciniega, and she's amazing. And this story gets amazing. I just love the story because it's around great. It's a good story. It's around great people that want to help, but honestly, it's about outreaching in your voice. So what happened from there is we said, okay, got the facts, got the ratios, got the numbers. Not the funding yet, but let's present them what they wanted. So we got them the numbers, got them the ratios, and they definitely just made us go in a circle and just keep going in circles. We did multiple meetings where they were just like kind of putting our beliefs and on what we think could affect the students and kind of push it towards the side, because sometimes with people with power, they have their own agenda and their own goals, and they really were pushing that on our whole community to basically raise taxes and to do certain things that we're like, we honestly don't have funding for that right now. We need to kind of step back and realize, where are we mentally? Because when we would go to these meetings that sometimes last 3 a.m, it was bad. They would literally say, okay, so these are our numbers. and this is where a student is producing, and these are the students that are struggling, and some of them either have they're dyslexic, or any disabilities that may limit them for producing in the classrooms, and all these leading factors. And then we always thought to ourselves, you're talking about how much tutoring they have, how much books are they reading, what grade are they reading, like all this stuff that they're trying to force on the student to like get better to raise the numbers. And one of the meetings, we literally stopped them and said, we love everything you're saying about how you're trying to implement improvement in the students. But let me tell you, one of the biggest factors to changing this and coursing the numbers to increase the students' participation is to focus on their environment, where they live, and what resources are they getting access to in order to focus on their mental needs. So that's how we started pushing that agenda again. Like, we need to now make mental health a priority. After that, it was just, they started limiting our kind of rights and freedoms because they didn't like how we were kind of advocating. That was so like pronounced. They said like, oh, you can't clap anymore. You can't have any signs anymore. The students have to be behind the cameras. They were really limiting. I'm telling you all the tea. This is the good stuff because this is, but I think, it's the tea. But this is the good stuff because I think students need to understand, like, as much as it's important to use your voice, sometimes when you hear no's, those are the no's that really push you to even get more insight, to have more outreach and more people that want to help you. So moving forward, I mean, what we did from there is we started hosting our own school board meetings because we're like, if they're not going to listen to us, then we need to host our own school board meetings that the community can come to. And we start asking them the questions and we start telling them what we think. So that's what we did. And in order to have an official school board meeting, you need to have at least 2 people on the board, which we had 2 people on the board come. We had the news come, we had the community come, and we told them this is what we need to focus on. And it's our mental needs. I mean, it was a lot of advocacy. I went to speak at St. Mary's University about student activism on why we need more resources and outreach in our community and what they can do. And it's basically listening to people and finding ways to kind of get this funded and kind of helping the media kind of coerce them to kind of changing their agenda. Because if nobody realized what was happening behind closed doors, nobody was going to realize what kind of hole we were in as a community, which kind of gave us the stigma that the community didn't want to help their community, but they didn't know that the community was being left out of the choices and decisions that were being made for the community. So basically what happened is I've actually, which is a coincidence, I'm good at networking, but in 3rd grade, I had a teacher, her name is Miss Saldana, and she has a brother, and her brother ran for city council. His name's Ray Saldana. His name's very important. Yes. You know who that is?
Yes.
Do you know her? Yes.
Okay, yes, just a little bit, but yes.
Okay, I can.
It's an important name.
So his sister noticed that I'm just an extroverted person, and she's like, "Well, I would love for you to help my brother." And this is 3rd grade. Help my brother advocate for him to run and stuff like that. And so I was like, "Okay, cool." So I was there with signs, little me, 3rd grade. You know, I started activism when I was little. Well, basically, what happened at the end of that was that we became close. Me and Mr. Saldana became really close. And what's funny is that when we were doing all this advocacy for more mental health resources, we went to him and we're like, now that you have this role and position, it was his 2nd term, what can you do? And he's like, well, I'm about to end my term, but I will see what I can do. I'll kind of check back on y'all. So basically, kind of the last school board meetings that were happening of that year, he said, you know what? I've met with the city and we found $1 million to open up the wraparound services that you wanted.
Oh my God.
And we asked him, we wanted a wraparound service for our community. And what we want is a senior center, therapy, tutoring, like all of this stuff. And that's where it was going to go. Are you ready for the tea?
Yes, give me the tea.
All we had to do was go to the school board and present it at the meeting. And all they had to do is one of the schools that was vacant because we couldn't fund to stay open. They were just going to transition it and renovate it for this wraparound service. And the $1 million was going to go to renovations, to services, to housing the workers. The school board, since they wanted to open up a new high school that we didn't have money for, they were so set on that. He said, first, what we did is we gave a testimony. We said, like, I am suicidal. The students went up and said, like, we were suicidal. Like, we were done. Like, we were tired after all of our meetings. And then what he went after we were done speaking at that same meeting, I can even send you a link. He said, okay, I'm here to fix the problem. I found $1 million. You just have to accept it for wraparound services. And the school board denied it. Free, $1 million, free. And we found everything after 2.5 years of all of that hard work. They literally said no for their selfish reasons. I'm just being truthful and honest because I think that's what we need in today's world in order to have change. Is to be truthful, is that they limited us even more by just saying no. But let me tell you, students literally cried. We're crying when they said no. They didn't know what to do. We felt lost. We felt like everything we're working for 2.5, 3 years was supposed to
Yes.
go to implementing these services in
Yes.
our community. What do we do now? And me being the person I am, I'm like, once for me, how I go about things is I'm like, whatever the outcome of it is, and if it's not in my favor, I can't change it. Just know that's my reality. And all I can do is
Yes.
build a foundation that's more towards what I'm looking for.
All right.
So I kind of instilled that into my friends and in the organization. I said, we need to come harder. This is like they say, your struggles can find your
Yes.
greatest solutions. So we're like,
All
what do we
right.
do? What do we do next? We work with Susan Arciniega, the one social worker we had. And she's like, you know what
Yes.
we need to do? She's like, we need to meet up at once a month. On top of serving all of these students and all these schools, she's like, we
Yes.
need to meet up once a month and we need to figure out ways that we can relate to students and find something that's a method for us to like kind of collaborate with the students, get numbers, kind of see what services they need, just give them help and let them know what services we have. If no one wants to give us new services or convenient services in our community, what can we tell them about the services that are there so they at least know?
Yes. Yes.
So in this time, we were working with our counselors, and an article came out that stated that we were saying that counselors are not effective anymore, which in reality, it's our counselors are amazing. They're academic
right.
counselors now. They're
Overwork.
academic,
Yeah.
but they're academic.
Got it.
So
Got
what
it.
happens is that kids would come and they'll be like, I'm LGBTQ plus, I'm suicidal.
Mhm.
They would say like, I
Mhm.
have mental health issues, I'm in a crisis. A lot of the
Mhm.
counselors, since they're more kind of set to be like academic counselors, they would
Mhm.
want to help, but all they would literally say is like, I totally understand. Give us a paper and be like, here's the services you can check out, instead of kind of understanding where we come from and be a little more
Mhm.
relatable, because they've
Mhm.
really been trained to be academic counselors. So that's already limiting. The counselors that were supposed to be a resource are very limited, and it's not their fault. It's because our academic system has really pushed our counselors to just be making schedules, scholarships. What colleges are you going to? What numbers are we going to get out of this? And so what we did is, first, what we did to fix that gap is we actually got our counselors trained, LGBTQ plus trained and certified, because we're like, they need to at least know what they're saying, instead of just
Yes.
saying like,
Yeah.
I totally understand. Or what they say, the funny one, the one that they say is they're like, oh, I know somebody who's gay. Like that's their way of understanding. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Like what
No.
does that do? No.
No.
I know.
No.
And it's funny. And so I'm telling you everything from all the collected
Of
uh,
course.
from everybody else, everything that everyone's telling me and like what I've heard
Yes.
and what we've discussed at the meeting, and that's what it's all collected of. So what happened is we were like, well, what do we do? So we would go to these meetings, talk about how we needed to get them certified and trained, which we did in these meetings. And we're called like the mental health ambassadors of our school. We're like, oh, fancy. So there was like about 5 or 6 of us, and we would meet up and she
Okay.
would buy us breakfast. And so basically we created a solution. And so what we created was a first ever was a mental health exposium. That's what we called it. A mental health exposium. So
Oh.
think about this. For me,
Okay.
I love writing music and I love singing. And so if I need to cope with anxiety, stress, depression, or anything that I'm going through, I write music or I sing. And I'm like, that's a good way for me to self-cope and I don't have to go to get services. What if we can make an event that's basically for kids to express how they cope with things, how they're dealing with their mental health, and maybe also at this event we can have people who can tell us about resources, because we want to get students engaged. We're like, how can we get students engaged where they can last more than 15 seconds? How long is a TikTok? Like 15 seconds? Longer than a TikTok
Yes.
video, and actually
Yeah.
get
Right.
informed about the resources in our community. So that's
Yes.
what we did. So we hosted the first ever mental health exposium. It was in May for Mental Health Awareness Month.
Oh gosh.
Everybody got green little ribbons, and so the
Yeah.
theater arts program did a skit. The literature club read poems, and they were deep poems. They were for you to get insight about mental health and anxiety and depression. The dance team danced. The drummers drum. You know, it was just very exciting, and you were just glad to be there. It felt like a talent show, but for you to express yourself and for you to cope and for you to understand, like, you know what, I feel the same way too. And we also shared resources that were in our community. And from that, these articles were getting created at the same time about being denied about the resources and the funding. Then another article came out about us doing the first ever mental health exposium. And then it got nationally recognized because other people were like, wow, that's a good idea. We would love to do that. And so the next year came and all these people wanted to reach out to us, and they were like, you know what, we wanted to do something like that in our community too, where we can do an exposium. So we're like, okay, and our focus now is to make a better exposium where we can like inform people and tell them about current services. COVID happened, you know, I was working so hard. Okay, this is how my limits. I mean, my standards. I'm like, I can reach out to Selena Gomez. Maybe she can perform and talk about mental health. I can reach out to like, I mean, I was reaching out to people. I'm like, I don't care how
Yes.
embarrassing I am, as long as I know I
Yes.
tried. You know what I mean? So I
Yes.
was
That's
trying to
right.
reach out to people, and then COVID happened, and we're like, oh my God, there it goes. Well, what happened before COVID, if I want to rewind before COVID, after we had that exposium, the articles came out, and then I believe it was already the end of that year, and it was 2019. So summer 2019, after we had the exposium, we came back to school. And this is transitioning to 2020, 2019 to 2020. So it was probably August, and I got a phone call from the social worker, Miss Arciniega, and she's like, Mark, I have amazing news. And I said, well, what's up? She's like, well, the articles that have been produced about y'all, about y'all just asking for services, y'all going against the school board, y'all talking to,
Mm-hmm.
all these news reporters, speaking of St. Mary's, all these articles, people have just been like looking at y'all and trying to figure out what they can do to help, and just see that
Okay.
students are using their voice for change.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
what they did is these 6 nonprofits came in, and they're like, we want to create the first ever mobile mental health collaborative. The
Wow.
collaborative is going to be funded for 1 year. And in that 1 year, we want to see what movement and impact it have in the community. So with
That's
these
right.
services, it's going to be free for the students, staff, and teachers. And teachers can self-refer themselves. They can refer any staff, and they can refer students.
Mm.
This is like amazing. We're like, oh, it's exciting,
Yes.
So it was going to
Yes.
have, so these services were going to help with crises.
Mm-hmm.
It had Jewish Family Service implemented in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember it had CIS, Families in School, Clarity,
Mm-hmm.
Bereavement Center. All of these amazing services were just now going to be in a collaborative, convenient in our community. So we're like, okay, that's awesome. So November, it was going to be the grand opening. I believe it was like a November 12th, 11th was the grand opening. Well, we actually got a donation, I believe, from Lowe's, and they gave us a donation to create a closet. And we had San Antonio threads in our community. And anybody who's watching this, if y'all want to do this in y'all's community, like just reach out to people. So what they did is they're like, we want to give y'all money so we can create y'all like a dressing room and places for y'all to store clothes. And then the San Antonio threads like, well, y'all create the dressing room and we'll provide you free shoes, free backpacks, free clothes, everything. And then San Antonio Foods like, you know what, if you do that, then we're going to provide a food
Oh
pantry
my
in the
goodness.
collaborative.
Oh my
So
goodness.
basically for the grand opening, we had dressing rooms with brand new shoes
Oh
from
my
Nike,
goodness.
Adidas, backpacks, everything. And then San Antonio Food has food in the pantry. I mean, and look, watch, it just gets even better because we thought ahead of the pandemic. And when the pandemic came, we literally had a foundation that was there for us to support us, because now transitioning to pandemic, excited, the services are open. We've already helped thousands of people before spring break. Spring break came, and me and my friends were just there at the lake, and then we found out, oh, we're not going back to school. We're like, yay, spring break's extended. And then we realized
Right.
we realized why. And we're like, oh no. We were a little scared. We were scared. We were honestly
Right.
so scared. And then we started realizing that things started transitioning and changing.
Yeah.
And we started
Yeah.
realizing our mental health and our mental needs and our
Yes.
mental state started
Yes.
declining. And for me,
Yes.
somebody who's just very extroverted, I literally felt like I was not part of the classroom in the same way. And my teachers noticed it. They noticed it too, because they were like, Mark, your grades are amazing. You're like falling behind. Like, what is it? And for me, I literally like try to be motivated, but it was so hard. It's just, you didn't feel the connections. You didn't feel the characters and the personalities wanting to help you. And it just wasn't the same. And you can feel the same way. You can feel the same thing for the teachers. The teachers felt like, here it is again, and what do we do? So then I spoke with the nonprofits, and I said, well, what can we do? Because me still involved, I wasn't just like, yeah, it's open. I was like, no, we got to keep pushing it. How are we going to implement this for now, the Zoom community? So they're like, well, we're going to do telehealth. We're going to do telehealth, and it's something that we're going to start. So they started doing telehealth. I said, well, we need to start getting more marketing online. We need to get it on our main pages. We need to email the students. I can also check on students and refer them to the care zone. They're like, yes, keep doing that. And we saw a great success of people using the services. And it's because they were there and they were in place prior to it. And just, I want to stop real quick and kind of like reflect on something that I forgot to mention, is that mental health in my community is kind of stigmatized as being something that is for the white people to only do and get help
Yes.
because they have money,
Yes.
or
Yes.
it's something that is not real. In the Hispanic community, Mexican, Latino, they all think it's not real. They're like, come on, mijo, mija. Not my parents, they're amazing, but there's a lot of people that are like, come on, mijo, mija. You need to step out of it. You need to be a hashtag girl boss. You need to literally push yourself. But the thing is, they were saying that mental health and depression and anxiety wasn't real. And that's a stigma in my community, is they didn't believe that. And that's also what limits students from even speaking to their parents about it or being transparent about it. So once we started doing this outreach, and once I started seeing that there was a whole 6 nonprofits of services that wanted help for mental health, and we started speaking about it more and speaking to the parents, they literally started understanding. And especially during the pandemic, when they started feeling things they never felt before because it was too much for them to handle, work and school, they're like, what is this?
That's right.
They started seeing what we were saying, what anxiety is and what depression is on the website, and they're like, oh my God, I feel the exact same way. And then from there, they're like, whoa, then they want to learn about the services. And it's just exciting because we start learning about new parts of our brain. And you know how when people say we don't use 100% of our brain, to me personally, I think that's true, because I think there's sides of ourselves we don't get to see until we meet those levels of stress or anxiety. And that's when we start exposing ourselves to new sides that could be damaging to ourselves, but it's what resources and how we cope with it to overcome the struggles. And what's exciting is when they learned about the services, they were super excited. And also, toilet paper was something that was very popular during the COVID. And so since we had that food pantry that also had like other stuff, there was toilet paper for our community, there was food for our community. And also we were doing these things where we were like, I would reach out to my friends. I said, hey, how are you doing? And they would say they're doing good. But then sometimes something told me I need to just go check up on them. So I physically went to the location, and I can tell something was off. So I had them signed up to go get food from our food pantry, or I would deliver it to them, because I totally understood, like, they didn't want to be as honest, as transparent on how much they're struggling, And I just know that I was glad and I was able to be there in the moment, and and be there for them, and just be a resource that could help them. But honestly, from that, I mean, there's just more great news. From that, after that happened, I spoke with I forgot to say this, but a little before the pandemic, the San Antonio Spurs reached out to us, and they were like, we noticed your story. We noticed y'all. So many people kept telling us about you. They're like, we want you to meet DeMar DeRozan, from the Spurs.
Oh, he's a big mental health advocate.
Oh my God, he's amazing. And he literally said, I want to speak to y'all. So we got our small group that started the whole mental health collaborative. He's like, I want to speak to y'all. And so he spoke to us about where he comes from in his community. And it's literally was a touching moment, because
and trauma.
You see somebody who has star power, who's literally putting out numbers, who's literally an influence in your life. And then you see kind of the honesty and the humility of where he comes from, and like how hard it is to like kind of live this life from where he came from, lacking resources. And you realize, wow, if you just use your knowledge and empower your community and kind of have these services, you can help people that want to be superstars in the future kind of have a base of somewhere to start off so they can be even better in the future. And so it was just amazing. And I think after we spoke to him and he saw where we came from and heard what we're doing, then I believe maybe a couple months later, I think that summer, probably was summer 2019 as well. Or maybe no, 2018. The San Antonio Spurs Foundation said that they wanted to speak with me, and they wanted me to accept $187,000 that they were going to donate to the nonprofit. Because remember, it's only for 1 year. And I was just like, this is amazing. This is just amazing. And so I was just very grateful. And we had the collaborative open and stuff like that, like I was mentioning. But again, remember this, it's only a year we had paid for.
That's right.
And the pandemic took up most of our time that we're supposed to be using that funding. So then we got back into the grind, and we're like, okay, let's get back into it. I'm in college now. I'm like, oh, I can't really have a lot of input because, I'm not physically there in my community to do it. So I was like, I got to do my part. I called the CEOs of all the nonprofits. I would call the social workers. I said, how are we doing? I need to get updates. What can I do? Because I wanted to stay involved, and I didn't want to just be convenient at the time that it was convenient to me. I wanted to make sure that I was doing something that was going to keep going from there. So what happened after that, I mean, so many more meetings went on. We went to speak to a Texas State representative, Will Hurd, and he was trying to get it federally funded. Then we spoke to the owners of HEB, which is, I don't know if you know what HEB is.
No.
Okay, so you know Walmart?
Yes.
Okay, so basically HEB is like the better version of Walmart in San Antonio. Like
Okay.
it's like it was named
Okay.
like one of the best businesses in the United States, I believe. They're
Oh
like
wow.
really they're all about community, and they spoke to me and they're like, "We love what you're doing." And I spoke with the owners that probably founded this in the 1900s something. They're like, "We saw what you're doing, and we want to kind of create a collaborative, but in our stores because they have a lot of stores in Texas." And they're like, "We want to create something like that in our stores," and they're just amazing. But just speaking to these people and the summer of 2020, now that I'm in college, and everything's happening, and I'm just like, well, what could I do next? Well, I got a call from one of the nonprofit CEOs, and she was like, Mark, we have an amazing offer, but we need you to give a testimony about why we need more funding for these services for the collaborative. And
You
I'm
were
like,
ready.
I was
You
like,
were ready.
I'm ready. I am
Yeah.
ready. I am ready.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
I'm just so excited because it's just so amazing, and I'm just so like appreciative. But so what happened is like, okay, I have class, but like, how can I make it? Literally right after class, I drove from College Station all the way to San Antonio, which is like a 3-hour drive. I said, I'm going
Oh
to
my
give them a
goodness.
testimony, and I need to be honest, and I need to
Yes.
be raw with them. I kept it short,
Yes.
sweet, and I can send you the testimony because I have it the live
Please.
thing. So they're like, the San Antonio
Please.
courthouse wants to speak to you, and they want you to give a testimony of why you need more funding for mental health. They didn't tell me how
Mm,
much
mm,
that they
mm,
didn't even tell me what was happening, kind of. I was more
mm.
just gonna speak and give a testimony. I gave the testimony, and these people with so much power just looking down at me, and I'm just like, look how far we've come, just speaking and just outreaching. I'm like, just be in front of the courthouse, speaking to people that make rules for our community in San Antonio, which I love. They were like, we're super amazed by what you're doing, and we totally understand, and we're going to approve the funding. Now, to me, I'm like, approve the funding? I thought we're going to ask for us to even like kind of make like a little like deal, like what kind of funding are we looking at? But they already
Yeah.
had a funding
Yeah.
that they were going to approve. I just had to give a testimony before they approved it.
So they could approve it. Oh
They can
my
approve it.
God.
And I think if they told me the amount, I literally probably would have panicked. Like I would have panicked because I was so calm. I was like, okay, let me just
Right.
speak.
Right.
So I gave the testimony, and after they approved us $4 million to keep
Oh my
funding the
gosh.
collaborative. And I was just like,
Oh my
oh my
gosh.
God. It was just
Oh my
so
gosh.
exciting. And I was just like, well, what's next? And from there,
Mm.
the collaborative has now been implemented into 3+ schools. And I know it's Edgewood, Harlandale, and South San. And other schools in our community have kind of implemented their own collaboratives based on their resources in their community. And it's creating these connections that literally create a bigger platform for us to get help, and for us to kind of break the stigma of mental health, and for us to have more resources that we can actually use. And so it was just amazing. And what's crazy, after that, I have more interviews and more articles, and it's really great and it's amazing. But I think it's amazing how people just want to outreach and network and learn more about it. So I appreciate what you're doing here, and I
Yes.
appreciate your perspectives that you have. I watch your podcast; they're like literally amazing. I'm like, I love our guests. Um,
Thank you.
but but no, it's really amazing what networking can do for a community, and social media can do
Yes.
if you use it in the right way. But definitely,
Yes.
that's the story of everything.
Wow.
So it's crazy. I mean, it's just super duper crazy.
That's phenomenal. And Mark,
Yeah,
just congratulations on all that success. And I'm so moved by you and a group of young people. Y'all were high school kids
and
who
we were
said,
like sophomore, freshman
oh
kids.
my gosh, like
Yeah,
14, 15-year olds, right? To go out there. And I think of the many things that are amazing about it, one is that you were not just out for self. You were out for your community, right? And in the Hispanic Latinx community, where in your community there were so many needs, everything you talked about, we call that, and you know this from your studies, we call that social determinants of health. So you can't study, you can't have good mental health, you can't, be engaged with your family in all the best ways if your needs aren't being met, like basic needs. Like, do you have food in the house? Do you have toilet paper? Do you have, I don't know, the paper and pencils that you need to do school? And so do you have the people physically in the school to help you with everything that you need? The school social worker, the school counselor. And if you don't have those things, it's really a lot to ask young people to show up and focus. It's a lot to ask their parents and their loved ones to show up and focus in all the ways that they're supposed to. So you all managing social determinants of health, like taking care of the whole community, like everybody and all the different kinds of needs. That is a model for, and I'm so glad that people picked up on it and you pushed it into other schools. So what I would love to hear
hmm
is, as you transition to college, I know you still go back and are involved. Are there things that you've done in college right? In this new setting in College Station, that have been an extension of your activism and advocacy.
Definitely. And I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to transition into that, but I love that, we just had that time to recap. But definitely in college, what's amazing to me is how our university is huge. It's one of the best universities in Texas, and they have so much pride and so much spirit. But I love A&M so much, but we're lacking so many resources. And the thing is, I think, like we said, when people start outreaching and speaking out and just bringing up mental health, people start understanding that they have a place to go to or someone to speak to. So once people started figuring out that I know a little bit about mental health or ways to cope with it, I had so many people call me, message me, and they literally would tell me, I am suicidal, I'm depressed, I'm cutting myself, or they're saying all this stuff, and they're telling me all this stuff, which is kind of overwhelming. So what did I do as a college student at A&M? I was like, well, I need to reach out into this and see what services we have. So let me tell you, A&M has a lot of different things that they do, and they're super amazing. So what they do is, let me give you some personal stories, because I think if we give personal stories, it makes sense. It makes sense the best. I had one of my friends who said, I have a friend, and she said, he's saying he's suicidal, and he messaged my other friend, and he said, before I attempt anything, just tell the other person that I love them and stuff like that. And she was telling me all this stuff as the other person was messaging her. And I'm just like, oh my God, what can we do? And she's like, I said, the thing is, she wasn't kind of in close relationships as contact anymore with them. So he didn't have any way of contacting her directly. So that's why he was messaging a friend. So basically what happened, I said, you need to kind of get in contact with him ASAP, make sure he's doing okay, and let's see where he's at. So she messaged him and started getting in contact with him right away. He started messaging. We're like, great, we know where he stands and make sure he's still here. And so as she's talking to him, I said, you need to make sure you keep him there as long as you can. We need to send someone over there to do a checkup. I wonder if A&M does that, where they do checkups. And A&M says they do. Now, do they do them? We don't think they did it. So we called and they said, oh, sorry, we can't start helping until after 4 p.m. So if you're suicidal before 4 p.m., from the way they made it sound
just out of luck.
You can't, sorry. But I mean, there's other gaps. I mean, there's other holes, and you're going to find them out right now that you're going to be like, a university, they need to get better. So what happened is that my friend's like, okay, I'll wait till 4. So she waited till 4, called them. She called them, and I have to be real. She called them at 4 and said, can y'all do a wellness check on my friend, XYZ? And I said, okay, we will. The friend never messaged that anybody did a wellness check, and they never called her to confirm that they wanted to do a wellness check. So I don't think they ever did the wellness check. And the thing is, she wanted, it was just this whole thing. And I said, well, what we're gonna have to do now is have a police go over there and do a wellness check. If these people are serious, you never joke about being suicidal or play around or never do it for attention. No. If you do it, that's right. For me personally, if someone does do that, I'm gonna have someone go over there or me personally go over there to check on you, because I want to make sure you're doing okay.
That's right.
And so I told her, we're gonna have to call the police and they're gonna have to do a wellness check. She's like, well, I don't want to do that. That seems too harsh. I said, but the thing is, if he's serious and he's saying these things, you have to do it. And so
that's right.
I believe she did do that, and that's what happened. But the thing is, sad part on A&M's part for not confirming with her that they did a wellness check, because it makes her,
you gotta let them know. Yes,
it makes her have more anxiety if they did it or not. And so it was just so sad. And I'm just like, that's a huge gap. We need to fix that. So now here's the second thing. The second thing A&M offers is for you to do group therapy. Now, let me tell you how many students I've talked to. So many. And I don't ask them this. They tell me this. No one wants to do group therapy, and they're saying this, they're suicidal. They're going to be like, I'm suicidal too. No, because it's so hard to even come out to say you're suicidal or you're depressed, or you have anxiety.
That's right.
So in group settings, they don't work. And from what I've heard, this is from what I heard, and I tried to look it up, but I couldn't find it because I don't think they would put this number out there. But someone said you can only use their services 9 times before they say you're done. And the thing is, how many times do you think someone's going to use those services? More than 9 times in 4 years. So from my understanding, if I have this correct, they would basically be being denied service, and either they would do group therapy or private therapy. Now, another friend told me she was suicidal. I was there when I witnessed her when she was having a mental breakdown. We tried to calm her down and everything, and she was like doing breathing exercises and finding ways to cope. And I was kind of walking her through it.
Sound like she was having a panic attack.
She was having a panic attack. She definitely was, and she was just homesick. And I said, what we can do is just put some heat packs on you. We need to cool you down, take a cold shower, bring your blood levels down. I thought I was a doctor, but I wasn't. But I told her, well, we need to get you you to get some private services. And so we looked into A&M for the services again. Suicidal again. Remember, she said that they
Yes.
were booked maybe 4 weeks out. If that's a crisis and you're suicidal right there, and you
You
get
can't
told that
wait
it's
4
3 weeks,
weeks.
I don't think no one's going to wait 3 or 4 weeks. And I've heard that
Mm,
multiple times. So then after that, I'm just like, okay, cool, it gets better. And after that, I just had more people that reached out to me because they knew that I already had kind of that they would use me as their therapy. And I loved it. But at the
yeah.
same time, I just
Yeah.
felt very limited
That's
that
a
I couldn't
lot.
expand even more. And so
That's right.
I had other friends that literally got checked into what's it called? Psych wards? Is it psych wards?
Yes.
they
Psychiatric
got
ward.
they got
Yes.
they got checked in twice, and they said, I think I need a therapist as a behavioral therapist, and this is what I think I need. And I said, well, you know what I could do as a friend? Anybody that's watching this, if you want to be an ally for someone and they're telling you that they need help, what you can do is say,
Yes.
I understand you, I want to help you, let me reach out into the community, because I know right now you probably don't have enough brain power or energy to
That's
do
right.
that, and I want
That's
to see
right.
what services are there, and I want to see
That's
what we
right.
can do for you. So I told my friend,
That's
I
right.
said, I'll reach out and see what we can find. And in College Station, I couldn't find anything. I looked
Oh
up
my goodness.
I looked up behavioral therapy, and it was telling me for therapy for autism, which I found a lot of for autism. But for therapy, I think you had to like find a private therapist, and a lot of them just didn't have themselves like marketed well, I guess, on Google for us to find them. So I'm just me. I was like, this is a mess. Like what can we do?
Yes.
So let me tell you what I did next. Two other things I tried to do. So my friend was running for student body president, and what he was trying to do was basically um, speak about first generation, speak about mental health, speak about community and inclusiveness at A&M, because we're very cultured and we're majority white serving institution, and we're trying to break those numbers. So me being on his team, I said, I'm going to be in this team. And I was the communications director. And I said, we need to work with nonprofits. And I'm thinking, let's create our own collaborative for a university. A lot of these social workers or therapists are there. They just don't know like that people need it, because I guess we just can't
Yes.
find them.
Of
So I
course.
said, we
Of
need to reach out into
course.
our community, make nonprofits kind of collaborate with the university, so someone can not only diagnose them, but prescribe them and basically say, we have diagnosed you and this is a prescription, because kids need medicine, after finding out
Yes.
that they have been diagnosed. And
That's right.
it's just like, oh, it's just so hard. So we're doing this campaigning and we ran for it. Unfortunately, we didn't win. It's just basically kind of a little popularity contest as well. Whoever
Of
knows the
course.
most people.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's like, I'm
Yeah.
like, we can't stop there. Like, what do we do now? Because for me, I wanted
Yeah.
to kind of create these collaboratives.
Yes.
Nonprofit organizations to come and create a collaborative for the university, have all of this stuff there. Got limited by not winning the vote. But what I did from there is I started getting involved in my organization more. And
Okay.
so the
Okay.
organization I'm in is Mexican Student Association. I just joined,
Mm-hmm.
and we are one of the
Mm-hmm.
largest organizations at A&M
I
University.
love it.
And
I love
I
it.
believe we have 600 members. So we try to speak for the minority, and try to just be there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I actually, maybe 3 days ago, I just accepted the position as the new vice president. So this upcoming year, I'm going to be the new vice
Congratulations.
president. But what I want to do with this
Congratulations.
position, thank you so much. But what I want to do with this
Yes.
position is, we're a social org. We're about, teaching people how to make tortillas, giving them scholarships, like all of this fun stuff. But I honestly want to use this as a time to use our voices and the numbers and the impact we have to kind of change votes or get things on the agenda that can kind of aim towards getting better mental health resources at our university. So what I wanted to do is basically, I want to kind of collaborate with our president and say, I would like to do wellness checks on our members and have them do
Mm-hmm.
private surveys.
Mm-hmm.
And with the private surveys, I want them to say like, what resources have they used? What's in the community? What are they lacking? And then maybe at another meeting, we can tell them about what resources are there. But also, if we start seeing that there's even more like time with scheduling, that they can't find time to meet up with somebody, or they get limited by how many times they can visit, or they're not getting proper treatment, or there's just whatever gaps they are, we can create all that data and present it to our university and say, we're one of the largest organizations on campus, and we think that this needs to be put on an agenda in order for it to get funded. And these are our solutions. And I think we can use our 600 members plus more we're probably going to gain to literally turn the agenda around to be aimed more towards the mental needs. And that's for the same reasoning that I mentioned previously. Because how do you
Mm-hmm.
expect a student produce in the classroom,
Mm-hmm.
number wise,
Mm-hmm.
and not
Mm-hmm.
check on their mental state before they can even produce anything, before they can even show up to school, before they can even be present and be a good friend to somebody? We need to really start putting more services and resources in the student before we expect them to produce anything. But what I could definitely say is, during the pandemic, I've definitely seen teachers' attitudes and their notions of mental health and the need of it more
Yeah.
after the pandemic,
Yeah.
because I started seeing
Yes.
teachers be like, I understand. Thank you for communicating with
Yes.
me. And they
Yes.
start using more pronouns. We have teachers. I'm surprisingly, we have a teacher that I had. She was transgender, and she was just
Yeah.
amazing. And we had other teachers who use pronouns, and just having stuff like that being implemented and just being
Yes.
more aware
Yes.
just literally made people feel more comfortable, more appreciated, more
That's right.
understood. And that's why we do
That's
these
right.
things, in order for people to feel like they have somebody there to count on and be a role model for them. So yeah.
I love all of it.
I
I'm just
know.
listening to this arc of you continuing the work that you started as a teenager, bringing it to college and right. So you had a bridge, right? You were going back and helping out at home in San Antonio. And then you just started to create this bridge to doing the same kind of work in College Station. And there's so many people who are benefiting from you and all your peers really investing in finding out the gaps, figuring out what the needs are, and then going and working to fill those needs. So, what I'm going to ask you as we wind down, I have a couple questions that I always like to ask, and I kind of rotate, and I'm going to pick one, and I want you to answer that question for me as we sort of close all this down and just reflect a little bit. So, my one question I want to ask you is, what do you do to take care of yourself so that you can always show up as your authentic and unapologetic self?
I love this question. To be honest with you and transparent with you, I think I overwhelmed myself this past couple of weeks, and
Okay.
I realized that I started getting migraines. I was very low energy. I felt like I wasn't eating enough. That's just how I felt.
Mhm,
And I
mhm,
started realizing, what was it and what do I need to do for myself, because this is not
mhm,
normal. So I
mhm,
went to the hospital because I just felt really, really just drained. And I was just like, this is not me. And they said that I was dehydrated. So let me just tell you, drink sure you drink enough water, make sure you're eating enough food,
mhm,
and make sure you're
mhm,
definitely getting enough sleep, because as you see, I'm
mhm,
a very involved person. So sometimes I would
mhm,
come home, I'm just admitting it, I would come home at 4 in the morning after like doing social
mhm,
org stuff. And so make sure you're getting enough sleep, you're eating right, but definitely make sure you're also checking up on your loved ones too, because the best way in order for me to cope is always to understand that someone else is kind of feeling the same way, and that you go through it together, and you understand that, you're doing checkups on them and they're doing checkups on me. And the person that I always do checkups on are with my mom. Because I think after all of this stuff, and after me and my mom have exposed ourselves to it, my mom's actually confessed to me. She's like, Mark, you know what? I didn't know that I was feeling like I was having anxiety
mhm,
attacks. But once you
mm,
started saying all these things and you started doing all of this, like these movements, I started realizing I've always been experiencing this stuff. And I always just thought, oh, it's maybe because I'm anemic and I have low iron deficiency.
mm.
But she also started realizing, like, it was also her mental state, that she was overworking herself and
Yes,
that
yes,
she wasn't
yes,
sometimes
yes.
prioritizing herself. And me and my mom do these checkups on each other. And it's literally like the best thing. And once you allow the conversation to happen in your household with your family, and once you understand that it's a real thing, you can create new bridges and a new relationship with your loved ones, and you start seeing a different part of them, and you just start realizing that, you know what, that they're trusting you with their feelings and their emotions. So make sure you respect it, make sure you get enough sleep, and make sure, another thing, if it's really bad, just get a sock and put rice in it, and then put some mint in it with some Vicks on your chest, and put it on your chest, because it feels really good. If you ever feel lonely, I always put like a heated towel or a heated sock
Yes.
around my neck, and it just helps me
Oh,
like relieve stress. And that's what I really do, and that's how
yes,
I kind of make sure that I mentally stay able to be present for my friends and family. And
yes.
yeah, that is my response.
Oh, what? That's so beautiful. Thank you for giving us some new ideas and some education and for being, in your words, so open and transparent. So,
Thank
Mark
you.
Mendiola, you are a rock star, and I am so excited to watch your star just like continue to shoot up in the sky because you are like I don't know if I've ever met anybody your age who've done so much stuff and like help so many people outside of himself, right? So like all these people around you, you've uplifted and supported. And I'm a parent, my kids are teenagers, and
Oh, that's awesome.
I'll say how much I value who you are as a person. And I know that for you to be able to do what you do and have the energy that you have, and compassion and passion for the work, compassion for people and passion for the work, there's a family there that is like uplifting and supporting. So I just want to honor the family. I want to honor the community that you come from, that they produce young people like you. So they give you the ingredients, but you got to bake the cake. So you're the one who took, I'm gonna use your words, like teach people how to make tortillas. So you had to put all the ingredients together to make the tortilla, and you just made something so fabulous. And it's just such an honor to talk to you. And I am really excited and looking forward to watching your star continue to rise and seeing you do all kinds of cool stuff.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And what I always tell people too, people like you and people who are advocating or do podcasts or articles or just doing that research, they're literally the reason why these fundings keep getting expanded or the outreach keeps getting to the masses, is because people keep just finding ways to network it out to Twitter or article to let them know that this is what's happening and this is what is the now, and this is what we can do in order to combat it, either by funding programs like this or for literally just listening to a friend and literally making sure that they're getting the resources that they need in their community. So I thank you for your time. Thank you so much.